Basically, what I want to do right now is get into some frameworks that I've developed when it comes to finding your creative voice. I want to preface this with something very important to keep in mind while you do any of these frameworks, because it won't mean anything if you're not being playful. If you're taking things too seriously or censoring yourself or overthinking things, your creativity is never going to get to the potential that it would be otherwise. So you got to keep in mind that playfulness is probably the most important mindset you can have in regards to being your highest creative self. Playfulness is what it's going to take in finding your creative voice. Another thing that I want to mention before we really get into it is the mindset of the work ethic. And there's something called the Prince method. Prince created well over 1,000 songs, and we heard less than 10% of the music that Prince actually created. He came out with 39 albums. All the other music that he created, nobody heard. None of his fans heard, because it's locked away in a vault somewhere. So as you can see, most of the time he was playing and practicing. And within those times of him playing and practicing, some of those songs became hits. And the ones that made it were the ones that were put on one of his 39 albums. When you think about the catalog of coming out with 39 albums, and you only released about 8% maybe of the total music that you've ever created, then that shows you the abundance of material that was created to even make one album. And then one more thing that is very important before you do any mental creative exercises is the importance of physical exercise. Whenever you do physical exercise, because of the brain-derived neurotropic factor, you heighten your mental abilities. So the more you exercise, especially cardiovascular exercise, if you make it a priority to exercise thoroughly in the morning, before you do anything creative, or at some point during the day, it's going to help you. And if you make it a daily habit, all these things have a compound effect. So make sure that you prioritize health and exercise, not just for your physical fitness, but also for your mental fitness. Without further ado, let's get into some of these things. Now, the first thing that I want to lay out right here is a list of different questions that are going to stimulate creativity in your mind when you ponder on these different types of questions. Okay, so the first set of questions is going to be about your identity and your inner drive. And the first one is, what hill would you die on even if nobody agreed with you? What do you believe that most people don't believe? What are you tired of pretending to care about? What would you say if you weren't afraid to be judged? The next set of questions is more about frustrations and rants, which is healthy from time to time. What makes you roll your eyes every time you see it? What's a popular opinion that you think is total BS? What trend do you hope dies a painful death? Now, I may be using some strong language, but you got to keep in mind, you want to be bold with your answers to these questions. Don't hold back anything. What do people keep getting wrong that you want to set straight? The next set of questions is about curiosity and fascination. So, first one is, what could you talk about for hours without getting bored? Everybody's got that one subject where they can talk about it for hours without shutting up. What's a weird rabbit hole that you fell into recently? We all do it. We all have the internet. What's something you wish most people understood? What's an unpopular or forgotten idea that deserves a comeback? The next set of questions is about emotion and meaning. What made you cry recently, whether from sadness or joy? What moment in your life made you feel truly alive? What would you create if you knew it would never be judged? What do you want people to feel after experiencing your work? And the next one is about voice and expression. This is probably one of the most important ones here, this group of questions. If your content had a personality, what kind of person would it be? What tone feels most natural to you? Ranty, poetic, sarcastic, or soulful, or educational? Who are your creative heroes and what do you admire about them? If you can leave one message behind after you're gone, what would it be? Now, you can treat these as journaling prompts, as videos, or just voice memos, or tweets, whatever you want. But the main goal here is not to just answer these questions once, but to answer them frequently, and frequently enough to where you can actually follow a thread on certain questions that you kind of are inclined to go down a little bit further. These are just a starting point. And next I want to talk about actually doing some deep dive research. Research on topics, of course, that you're interested in, but you want to set a certain time frame that you're going to do deep research. And then you can use a Pomodoro timer, which is only about 18 to 24. It's been scientifically validated that that time frame right there is the best chunk of time for focused work. You don't want to go too long. Your brain kind of gets tired of it and you're kind of spinning your wheels at that point. And you don't want to have it too short because you can't really get into the flow state. So anything between 18 to 24 minutes is perfect. Now, once you curate this information, now you can put it in a Dropbox folder, you can put it in a Google Doc like I do. That's basically what I use. Or you can use a Notion template if you want to get real fancy with it. But the point is to organize the information that you collect so that you can go back later and read everything that is important about that topic or topics, multiple topics. Now, this is something that I think is going to help people find their uniqueness. And what you're going to do is you're going to find everything that you disagree with and elaborate, explain why you disagree with it. So this thing is going to be done every day, right? It's best to do things every day like this. Basically what you're doing is you're learning something new every single day, and then you're trying to make connections to the things that you learn. For example, you learned something. Ask yourself what kind of metaphors, analogies, stories, examples, and things like that you can connect to the things that you have learned recently. But you basically want to do this as a creative exercise to build mental sharpness and build that creative muscle every day. The way most people engage with content is basically they'll read something online, they'll watch a video, but whatever they learn, they don't engage with it. It just escapes them. So they're passively really consuming information and not doing anything about it. They don't interact with their ideas, and that's why their creativity stays at that surface level and never breaks out any further than that. So next I want to describe and get into this thing called active creativity training. And what it does is it turns learning into thinking and thinking into insight. The magic isn't in what you just learned, it's in how you connect everything else that you know to what you learned. So I want to articulate this exercise. It's called idea alchemy, and we're going to break it down right now. This is dead easy to do. It's really simple, and you can do it repeatedly every day. It doesn't take long. So it's basically a 3-step framework, and it's learn, link, and leverage. And I'm going to explain. When you learn, basically you write down what you learned that day, whether it's a fact, a concept, a quote, an observation, or an insight. Link, this is where you ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Where else have I seen this pattern? What kind of metaphors, analogies, or stories and examples can I connect to this? And then the final step, which is leverage. This is where you turn what you learned into something, a piece of content or an artwork. You can turn it into a tweet. You can turn it into a video. It could be a voice note. It can be a journal entry. It could be basically anything. You can make a lesson for other people. Okay, so number 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some examples of how this works. So let's say you learned a simple fact like about how mushrooms can break down plastic. So that would be the learn part. And then you're going to link it to something like creative minds are like mushrooms. They grow in the dark and they turn garbage into life. So that's a simple metaphor of how mushrooms turn something plastic, which is garbage, break it down and turn it into life. And the way you're going to leverage it, people like to write tweets. If you want to write a tweet, if you do Facebook posts or Instagram carousels, whatever it is for you, YouTube videos, Or you could just put it into a bigger piece of an idea. You can make it something that's short and punchy that connects to something else. Let me give you another example. Let's say you just learned something like people often breathe incorrectly when they're under a lot of stress, which is true. It's what happens. So the link to that could be like the default response that people have when they're under stress is like a software that hasn't been updated. So when you breathe properly, you're actually updating your software, your physiological software, to the point where now you can operate and function properly. And some people are carrying around trauma from their childhood, and they haven't updated the software yet, so they haven't been able to grow past the trauma. So you just draw a parallel to something else that it can connect to. It's real simple. Now, number 3. This is where you want to gamify the process. So you want to make a game out of this. You want to make it a challenge. You want to make it challenging enough to where you can do it very easily, but also you want to make it impactful enough to where it has some meaning. So you'll want to do it, okay? So this is what you're going to do. You're going to do this for 7 to 10 days in a row without breaking the commitment. You can do it longer, of course, if you've never done any exercise for an extended period of time. Just start small, 7 to 10 days. And basically what you're going to do, you're going to try linking 2 unrelated ideas and then see what you can create out of that. Out of all the ideas that you come up with throughout the week, you may want to do more. It's up to you. But you're going to choose the best one, or 1 or 2 if you want to actually post out on X or YouTube or Instagram or whatever your platform of choice is. Now think about it like this. You're going to be producing a lot of content, creating your own content, but you're only choosing the best one. So in essence, you're kind of using the Prince method, like what Prince did when he created his music. So number 4, you want to create a template in your journal, something that you can repeatedly do and have it there ready to go. So basically what you do is you get a notebook, a separate notebook, and you're going to write in this notebook what I learned today at the top, what it reminds me of. Give yourself maybe 7 or 8, 9 lines to write, and then another 7 or 8 lines, and then you write what I can create from this. So that's where your ideas to create are going to be coming from. But this is actionable. You can make these in advance. It gets rid of the friction. The more you do it, the more you look for things to fill in, and you won't forget it. Like if you're not near your notebook, you're already thinking, okay, when I get home later, I know exactly what I'm going to put. In actuality, maybe you should try it right now. You can pause the video, try it right now in your notebook. What did you learn in the last 24 hours? Like, look, if you're not learning anything, if you can't think of something that you learned in the last 24 hours, that's actually very concerning. Because if you're not learning things constantly, you're just wasting your time. Okay, so it's very simple after that. You find out what you learn, you make the connection, you create something from it, even if it's just 1 sentence. It doesn't, look, this whole thing is not meant to be difficult or time consuming. It really takes less than 5 minutes. So I'm going to actually share what I learned yesterday, and I'll actually break it down because I was talking to a friend that I haven't spoken to in years on the phone, and we were talking for a while, and he mentioned some company that he invested in and he thought it would be a good idea, and the company's name is New Horizons. Okay, when I hung up, I did some research on the company because I'm thinking, maybe I can get in on this here if it's an opportunity. And what I learned was Lockheed Martin actually helped fund this company to send a probe all the way to Pluto. Now me hearing that, I'm like, damn, I didn't know that's crazy. Now that's pretty unbelievable. And honestly, I don't even know if I believe that, but the story is so amazing. If you know how far Pluto is, how long it actually takes, that's 3 billion miles. This probe took nearly 10 years to get to Pluto to collect samples. And I didn't even know this event even occurred. But I thought about it and I said, I thought it was very interesting. And I said, okay, I'm going to use this on the framework, right? So what I did was I wrote down what I learned, because it was so amazing to me and I couldn't believe it. And then I asked myself the simple question, what does this remind me of? So I played with a few possible links, and this is what I got. I used the metaphor of human potential, because if human beings can make a machine and send it all the way to Pluto, which is unbelievable. It's also, I can't even really wrap my mind around how we can send something that far away. But if we can do that, just think about all the other limitations we can break through. And the other metaphor that I got out of it was, it's about patience and long-term vision. Now, a lot of people, they want to achieve their goals in like a couple of months or a couple of years even. When you think about this, it took a decade for that probe to get to its destination. So if that's not being patient, I don't know what is. That's playing the long game. And in fact, I mean, in reality, a lot of times goals, like especially really big overarching goals, take more than 10 years. So it really just goes to show you how patience and dedication could, how what it really takes. And that's why it's so important to do things like this every single day to level up. And then the third metaphor that I came up with was believability and skepticism, because I'm partly skeptic on this. But with that being said, when it comes to creativity, skepticism, it's not only unnecessary, but skepticism is counterproductive with creativity. It doesn't work. It's pointless. So I said, okay, it's so unbelievable, and it feels like it's not even real that we can send a probe that far. But when you think about it, that's what true breakthroughs feel like at first. You see, our brains are not really wired to think that far. We came from colonies or tribes where we just were trying to survive in the jungle or the forest, or we evolved to a certain point, and it's like the brain hasn't really evolved to think that far out. So if we can evolve our thinking, maybe we can get our thinking to break out of Earth's orbit, then we can think much bigger and achieve more things. So that's the 3 metaphors that I got out of that. But when it came to the leverage part, I said, okay, this is what I can do with that. I can make an inspirational video or a tweet, or, I can talk about how it took so long from 2006 to 2015 to finally get to its destination, and then ask the audience what their Pluto project is. What is their long-term goal? And I said, you know what, maybe I can take the philosophical approach instead and tie it to something that sounds unbelievable, but make a point that sometimes things that seem unbelievable to our own imagination at the time is because we don't trust in ourselves to be able to get it done. And that's what makes it so that we miss out on a lot of the miracles that we would otherwise see if we did just believe in it. Or I can go with something more relatable, like an analogy for growth, like personal growth. And if you link it to what the New Horizons probe did, ask yourself, if you launch something today, like right now, are you okay with not seeing the results for years, and maybe even 10 years or 15 or 20 years? And then when it finally happens, you get the data that actually changes your perspective. So it could be something about realization at that point. So you see how this kind of gets your brain working to all these different scenarios? That's the whole point of the exercise. It's more of a ponderance. You start asking yourself other questions. And you may be tempted to even start researching even more, which is what I'm going to get into next here. Because with a lot of people who are creative and who like to create art, one of the major hindrances is that people are more, they have a lot of pessimism when it comes to it. It's almost like they're waiting for permission to create their music, or to write a book, to start their entertainment company or their music company, or whatever it is. There's just a long list of creative avenues, but they really stop themselves. And that's the thing that's blocking the insight. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break it down like this. The first question you want to ask yourself is, what is the thing that I want to see that doesn't exist? Basically, put it this way. Make the thing that you wish already existed. But like I said, you need to make it small enough to start, but deep enough to matter. So here's the framework when it comes to prototyping your dreams. It's something called fan fiction. Okay, I learned it in this book here. I was reading this book called Steal Like an Artist. It's a cool little book. It's very, very quick read. But anyway, what I got out of the book was, a lot of musicians, some of the best musicians we've ever heard, some of the best television producers, movie producers, and authors all emulated their heroes. And, when it came to authors, they would create fan fiction. So for instance, somebody would see the Jurassic Park movie, and then when they got home, they were so enamored with the movie, they wanted to take it upon themselves to write part 2 to the movie, right? And they would just sit there in front and with their notepad writing part 2 to the movie. And a lot of times it is these actions that made them such great writers. So when it came to writers, musicians, comics, movie producers, all of these people emulated somebody to become so good at what they do that nobody else can ignore them. So what I want to talk about is creating the fan fiction about the future that you want to live in. So it breaks down into 2 simple things. It's a wish, create framework. Ask yourself what you wish existed and then create it. It's really that simple. So every single day, or you can do this once a week, write down one thing that you wish existed and then create a small portion of it. Like, for example, I was watching a lot of Bill Hicks comedy lately. And I said to myself, I wish Bill Hicks was alive today so we can hear his point of view on what's going on in the world. But I would want it to have more of that philosophical or ancient wisdom approach because he was good at that. So I thought to myself, you know what? I can create a 90-second piece the same way Bill Hicks would have done it. Or maybe you want to create a movie about some computer hacker that turned into a monk and went into the mountains to meditate. I mean, whatever your imagination wants to do, it's all up to you. It pertains to what you really want. I can give you, you can look up examples online, but it's really about what you're passionate about. The things that occupy your mind should take root and grow on their own. You can be making movies, short movies, little comedy skits, articles to write. There's just endless things that you can do. And this is the best way to actually find your creative voice because you're creating momentum and you're basically putting yourself in a mental gym for creativity. And when you make it repeatable and you ask this question every day, what do I wish existed? And just answer that question every single day. It could be for a product that you don't see in the store. It could be literally anything. But when you ask yourself that question, then ask yourself, how can I make a small piece of that today? And it might be as simple as just writing something down in your notebook. And the reason why this all works is because, first of all, it builds momentum. It gets you out of just passively consuming information, not doing anything about it, or just having a thought and not really writing it down or taking action on it. But also, it breeds originality because this isn't something that you could look up on ChatGPT or any kind of AI. It really has to come from you. But it's training the brain to get into this original thinking pattern, this creative thought process. And then after a certain time, when it comes to some of the other exercises, you're not really copying other people, but you're starting to create on your own. You're not consuming content constantly, but you're actually producing content. And it also fuels the belief in yourself. Because when you start to do these things, you start to see and make more connections. And those connections are helping you find your true inner voice, your creative voice. So the last question you want to ask yourself is, today, what prototype do I wish existed? Now, even if it's weird, even if it's off the walls and crazy or unpolished, find it. Say it out loud. Write it down in your notebook. Create something out of it. Refine it. And then share it with us. We all want to see it. Let us know in the comment section what you're working on, what you're thinking about, or any ways that creativity has helped you find solutions to some of the problems in your life, as well as some of the creative techniques that you use to accentuate your own creative voice. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the like button. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you later.